My name's Graeme Raubenheimer. I'm a broadcast journalist for the past 16 years, and today we begin this special edition of the show with some breaking news. The lead on News 24's finally reached 1 million listens in under a year. Thanks go to all of the excellent News 24 editors, journalists and columnists who've lent a great deal of their time and energy to share their intricate knowledge of news. But most of all, thank you, lead listeners, for tuning in. We simply cannot tell the South African story without you. Enough bumbling from this hack. Let's get on with the damn episode. And today's one is a goodie. We crossed to chilly Davos, Switzerland to speak to business journalist Garth Theunissen on special assignment at the World Economic Forum. From the US Trump administration's push to control Greenland to Minister Tao's delicate US-SA trade talks, what did the snowy Swiss ski slopes have in store for Braai in South Africa?
Well, Minister Tao said to me that the negotiations are ongoing and that essentially South Africa is just waiting for firm dates from the Trump administration to continue with the negotiations. He's a fairly measured, very diplomatic guy by nature, and he seems quietly confident that they will make progress on those talks.
Later in our training topic, one Jozi man demanded a refund after being caught with an alleged sex worker in a Ferndale problem building. And finally, we celebrate legendary journo Percy Qoboza with On This Day in South African History, heard later in the show.
New episodes of The Lead air Monday through Thursday at 7 p.m.
Time for Rauby's pointless Braai quiz. What's the name of the local brand of water owned by the controversial Kwasiza Bantu missionary? It's often in the news for allegations of abuse suffered by its congregants. I'll give you the answer at the end of the show after On This Day in South African History. Who knows, you might get a big prize, you might not. Just promise me no Googling. My name's Graeme Raubenheimer, this is The Lead, and this is the South African story. Moving to our top story today, News 24 business journo Garth Theunissen is kitted out with only the warmest jerseys, I'm sure, out in Davos, Switzerland for the 2026 version of the World Economic Forum. Well, US President Donald Trump just finished his long, almost impossibly difficult to follow speech, Garth, with his plans now to take over Greenland, hovering over US-Europe relations currently like a dark cloud. How's it going that side? I think it must have been quite a circus with him arriving late.
How's it, Graham? Look, it's been an amazing experience. I said to someone just now, imagine the world's elite descending on a town like Plettenberg Bay, a town that's just too small to accommodate everyone. But somehow it works, but the best way to describe it is that it's organized chaos. And then with Trump arriving, the security levels just got ramped up enormously. So there's soldiers out in the streets with machine guns, doing security sweeps of cars. There's traffic jams. It's an amazing experience, but it's really quite chaotic, actually.
Sure. And I think you were in a room just before Trump arrived, a media processing room, and then suddenly you got pushed out of that. Is that right?
Yeah, look, it's just everyone's competing for space, particularly quiet space, and there's ministers, CEOs, etc., walking around. We kindly hosted at a venue that is sponsored by Braai SA. Essentially what happens is just ordinary shops, ski shops, sports shops, little supermarkets get converted overnight into, like South Africa House, which is where all the South African delegates hang out, Nigeria House, etc. So we're in there, we got free Wi-Fi, etc. But there's a lot of competition for space. Everyone's trying to do interviews, have private little breakaway meetings, etc. The media is all camped out here. So it's just a bit of a bun fight.
Sure, and obviously trying to get access to the Wi-Fi as well, just to have these discussions, I'm sure is a nightmare as well. I know Trump's speech, I don't know what we were expecting. It's usual rambling Trump self. But he's come out with this whole Greenland thing is now overshadowing a lot of the geopolitical space. And Trump is saying in his speech that he won't use force, or the US won't use force, but he really wants to start negotiations now for Greenland. Of course, this Danish autonomous land that a lot of people have been sort of wondering, why does the Trump administration want it? He says it's purely for national security interests, and now he wants to go into negotiations, and he's even further, threatening tariffs against European countries who don't want to come to the table. It's extraordinary times, isn't it?
Absolutely. Look, I guess the two small positives from a South African point of view is, A, he didn't mention South Africa, fortunately. Not that anyone necessarily expected him to. And B, the fact that he said he won't use force, and he seems to, by his standards, been fairly moderate, and said he's looking for some sort of negotiated deal in order to acquire Greenland, or, as he puts it, a piece of ice. I guess the world's markets will be somewhat of a relief from that. The worst case scenario would have been him saying they're going to take it by military force, which essentially could have signaled the complete breakup of NATO.
Yeah, absolutely. You were at this Brand SA delegation dinner in Davos this week, in rubbing shoulders with Trade and Industry Minister Parks Tau. He spoke to the press. And what's he saying currently about this elusive US-SA trade deal that our delegations have been pushing for the longest time now?
Well, Minister Tau said to me that the negotiations are ongoing, and that essentially South Africa is just waiting for firm dates from the Trump administration to continue with the negotiations. He seemed, he's a fairly measured, very diplomatic guy by nature, and he seems quietly confident that they will make progress on those talks, but it seems like the ball for now is in the court of the Trump administration. I guess the other side of that coin is that in the grand scheme of things, South Africa is probably fairly low down on the list of priorities for that administration.
But then there is some sort of silver lining, of course, with the AGOA agreement at the moment. It's sort of past the first sort of legislative hurdle over in the United States. It's past the House of Representatives, and very notably for South African concerns, Garth, and you've been following this as well, is that South Africa is not exempt at this stage. Of course, it's still got to go through two major hurdles, more difficult times still, which would be the Senate, and then obviously come to Trump's desk for signature. But at least that should be some buoyancy, some good news for the minister and the trade delegation as we sit.
Well, as Minister Tau said to me, it's gotten through the first hurdle. There's two that remain. It's got to be passed through the Senate, and then Trump has to sign it into law. The last of those is probably the biggest hurdle. There's also a lobby within the US that wants South Africa specifically excluded from AGOA. Whether that comes to pass remains to be seen. Personally, I'd be very hopeful that we do get AGOA extended with our inclusion. Again, the ball is in the Trump administration's court, and we're going to have to just wait to see what they do.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see how those two processes, the official US trade talks and the AGOA, sort of meet at a confluence. And I think it's the timelines of both of those which are going to eventually come to a head, right?
Well, I guess the thing is, if even if we're included in AGOA, if Trump decides to slap us with tariffs or maintain the 30% tariffs, then it in many ways jettisons AGOA for us, or at least renders it null and void. So the trade negotiations are still very important. And it's just whether we can get through this diplomatic impasse that we seem to have with the US government at the moment.
Yeah. What other big meetings, talk shops, Brand SA, and of course our government delegation? Anything else planned for the rest of the week? What are we else looking forward to at this stage from a South African perspective?
Well, look, at this stage, I'm approaching Davos from a personal perspective. I'm trying to line up interviews. I'm trying to speak to people. I've got a whole series of things lined up. Some of them are tentative. As I mentioned earlier on, the place is awash with delegates. Someone I spoke to on the train this morning was telling me how they casually ended up having a conversation with someone who turned out to be the Prince of Liechtenstein. So it's really not impossible to walk into a restroom and find yourself confronted with a CEO or a head of, well, perhaps not a head of state, but a very senior government official. So yeah, there's meetings going on all the time, and people think Davos is one big thing, but there's many little Davoses happening all around. I've just had a minister walk into the room right now as I'm talking to you, so that explains explains what I mean.
The WEF, it often gets slated, it's just another talk shop in the big scheme of things. But ultimately, in this new Trump administration, chaotic world order with all these, unprecedented tariffs that we've never seen before in the longest time, WEF, one could argue, is as important or as critical as ever. What is it meant to achieve ultimately?
Well, I think there is a lot of cynicism about Davos, but I think the best way to look at it is that it is really just a giant networking event. And while a lot of the media focuses on the kind of, the elite level of society, CEOs, government officials, etc. meeting, there's also tons of other meetings going on, ordinary business people who are heading up startups, people in the impact fund space. There's an incredible amount of very interesting and impressive people, walking around the town. There's just a series of little networking events. And where else do you have an opportunity where in the matter of 5 days, you can line up an event, chats with CEOs, senior government officials, etc. So I think from that perspective, you've got to see the positive in it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It's unfettered access. Did you see the headlines from Reserve Bank Governor Lesetja Kganyago speaking to some of the other members of the press there in Davos, Switzerland, saying, hey, that review of the prime lending rate, that thing that you've been on about for more than a decade now, Garth, while he's saying, hey, let's scrap it.
I did see the headline. I was very pleased to see that. Mostly just as a counter to some of the people who have criticized me for focusing on the prime rate. I am trying to get an interview with the Reserve Bank Governor. I bumped into him in the street. He was very friendly and polite and was happy to speak to me, but there's formal processes one has to go through. I'm trying to get through those, and hopefully I can get in front of him and he can tell us a bit more. But it certainly seems like the very long overdue review of the prime rate is coming to a head.
Okay, and before the WEF is finally done and you're on your flight back to South Africa, what's that one thing that you want to do in Switzerland before you return home?
I wouldn't mind, it sounds a bit boring. I guess I should say I wouldn't mind going snowboarding or something, but what I'd love to just do is go on a hike up in the mountains through the snow. That would be great. I don't know that I'll have time, but fortunately this weekend I'll be attending the snow polo compliments of Investex, so I'm looking forward to that. Should be a lot of fun.
Lekker, man. Enjoy every moment. Super jealous that you're out in one of the most beautiful countries the world over. I've only got fond memories of ever going to Switzerland. I really appreciate your time. Good luck for the rest of your journey at Davos, Switzerland. It's definitely one to remember and one to put down in your journalism notebook for many years to come, Garth. Thanks so much for the time on The Lead.
Thanks, Graham. Good chatting.
You're listening to the latest edition of The Lead on News 24 with Graeme Raubenheimer. If you've got an opinion on what you've heard so far, drop us a short voice note on our WhatsApp hotline. That's 072 562 3179. Trending topic.
Moving to our trending topic, and he thought he wouldn't get caught, only for the city's officials to rock up and spoil the party. This Jozi man even demanded a refund from the authorities after being caught this week naked in bed with an alleged sex worker in a Ferndale problem building, which locals claim was nothing less than a brothel. Inspectors have in the past few weeks been combing through alleged hijacked homes in Johannesburg's leafy suburbs. You'll recall News 24's coverage of a raid of an upmarket Bryanston property where dozens of illegal squatters had moved into makeshift Wendy houses on the expansive plot. Now, the Ferndale properties, according to journo Alex Patrick, collectively owed the city some nearly 5 million rand in unpaid utilities. At the Vine Avenue home where the Jozi man was caught, several vulnerable-looking women had been attended to by on-hand social workers. The water officials also removed the home's faulty meter after it had been tampered with to record a lower reading. Now, in the meantime, the city is pointing to criminal syndicates operating out in Johannesburg suburbs, where in one area there were reports of at least 32 problem properties. This story is only getting started. Drop us a comment below.
Looking for a smarter weekend scroll? The Weekender is your ultimate guide to bold stories, sharp opinion, and a fresh lens on life in Mzansi. From exclusive interviews and powerful essays to wine picks, playlists, and pop culture gems, it's your perfect weekend read all in one place, landing every Saturday on News 24. And finally,
ending off now with On This Day in South African History. That's the 22nd of January 1981, courtesy of SA History Online. On this very day, journalist Percy Qoboza announced that he was leaving apartheid South Africa, saying it had become impossible to run a credible black newspaper under apartheid's relentless media repression. Qoboza had risen from reporter to editor of The World, turning it into the country's most widely read black newspaper and openly supporting the 76 Soweto uprising. The paper was banned, and Qoboza was detained without charge until 78. After his release, he edited The Post, which was also forced to shut down. Now, his departure highlighted the suffocating limits placed on black journalism under apartheid. Qoboza later worked in the United States, including as a guest editor at The Washington Post, before finally returning home to edit City Press, our sister publication. An outspoken critic of apartheid, Qoboza sadly died in 1988 at the age of just 50 years old. In fact, he died on his 50th birthday in Johannesburg after a heart attack and falling into a coma. Time now for Rauby's Pointless Braai quiz. We asked, what's the name of the local brand of water owned by the controversial Kwasiza Bantu missionary, often in the news for allegations of abuse suffered by its congregants? The answer is, of course, Akwele. If this was your answer all along, congratulations, you scored nothing. Perhaps the quiet satisfaction of sounding very informed around the Braai place, and some say, hey, that's priceless indeed. Well, from everybody here at the lead at News 24, thank you so much for listening. 1 million listens thus far. It's a huge milestone for this very podcast. It's only going to get better from here, baby. Hit like, follow, and subscribe, and that way you'll be notified of all of our next editions on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, and iOno. Well, until next time, have an absolutely fantastic weekend. My name's Graeme Raubenheimer, and so long as there's trusted news first, we'll always have the lead.